all of you have a heart, right? Well, that means you could develop cardiac arrhythmias, such as atrial fibrillation. But there's a young generation of scientists from different fields, different cities, collaborating to combat it. And this is us. Okay, but now let's listen to them. I combine cells in the lab to see how things like inflammation can cause atrial fibrillation. I'm working with stem cells to create a disease model of atrial fibrillation. Looking at the small scale helps me to establish cause and effect connections. Here I am checking on some atrial cells to see how inflammation can mess up their normal rhythm.
I study how different genetic backgrounds influence the pharmacological response in atrial fibrillation patients. I spend my day in the lab working with stem cells as Thomas does. My focus, however, is shifted to the genetic and pharmacological aspects of this disease. Here you can see me in the stem cell culture where I check the genetic changes that these cells undergo during atrial fibrillation progression.
I investigate the correlation of atrial fibrillation and the structure of the heart tissue.
You usually find me in a microscopy room, looking at heart tissue. Here, I want to see how atrial fibrillation changes the fabric of the heart. By zooming into these small structures, we can start to understand how they impact the function of the heart at large.
I use image and signal processing tools in the hospital to better understand cardiac tissue properties.
As I mentioned, I work in the hospital.
Here, we are at the last step of the ladder in the fight against atrial fibrillation. We are working with patients' data, such as MRI images or electrocardiographic imaging maps. My work is focused on seeing if, by using non-invasive techniques, we can predict whether a patient will benefit or not from catheter ablation, which is one of the treatments for atrial fibrillation.
But each of our individual effort is just a piece of the puzzle. Our real strength comes from combining them. With Marilu's work, I can understand how to make my experiments specific for each patient.
With Eric's data, I can select which person might benefit most from the pharmacological treatment that I select.
With Teresa's work, I can relate what we see in MRI to what happens in real cardiac tissue.
With Thomas' research, I can understand initial causes for the long-term effects that I see.
The future of science is collaboration. Alone, we lack perspective. Together, we can see the bigger picture. To fight atrial fibrillation.